Yeah, I'm still waiting. Still waiting. Oh, we're live. Hello and welcome, dear Purposeful Parents. Welcome, dear tribe members, to another live session. Yes, it took quite a while to load, but I'm so glad that we are finally here. Yes, it caught me a little bit by surprise because the signal today is not the very best, but I'm so glad that we are here. Please, if you, as soon as you come on, let someone else know that we are already live. Today is going to be a very, very interesting and engaging class. We're going to be discussing the practicalities, the technicalities of structure, and how you can use it as a big tool for discipline, how you can use it to shape behavior for your children. I hope that you can hear and see me clearly. I noticed that last time we were live, there were quite a few of you who were having difficulties connecting to the session. So please, as soon as you come on, let someone else know that we are live, that we are already here and moving forward. Great. So today I'm going to be talking to you about discipline and structure. Structure is the backbone of discipline. There is no discipline without structure. Because if your goal is to raise a child who can lead themselves, then structure is your biggest tool. Imagine yourself without a backbone, right? You can't stand, you can't do much. So without structure, there is no such thing as discipline. Discipline is depends on how well your structure is working. So if you want to shape behavior, if you want to raise kids who can lead themselves, then you want to really master how to build and adapt your structure from time to time. So that's going to be our focus for this session. So once again, you're welcome. Please let someone else know to join in. Drag someone else to class, right? And keep the comment section buzzing. As soon as you catch a highlight, as soon as you catch something that resonates with you, if you have a question, don't forget to use the comment section. Yes, it's live and I can see every comment as you put it on the comment section. So I'd like to hear from you, right? What is your biggest hassle when it comes to structure in your home? What is that one thing that you struggle with when it comes to your structure? Is it, when you're not there? Is it getting others in your home to get on board with what you're trying to do? Is it getting your kids to follow through? Is it having to remind them all the time? What is your biggest struggle when it comes to structure, when it comes to schedules and routines in your home? Where do you struggle the most to make your structure work? Let me hear you in the comment section, because it's live experiences like this that can truly help us get the most value out of this session. Remember, I said today's session is going to be very practical. It's going to be address some of the common challenges that we encounter when trying to make structure work. Now, one thing I want you to remember is the fact that no matter how beautifully crafted, no matter how perfect the lines, everything neatly drawn up, no matter how perfect your structure components may have been drawn up to be, they will not make themselves work. You have to make it work. All right. And that is where knowledge comes in handy. We're going to be looking at some of the things that you need to have in mind, some of the things that you need to consider when you are trying to tackle the different challenges that you're going to face when trying to make your structure work. And let me just say this, right? If you see a parent who is maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, you see everything, routine, schedules are up, kids are adapting, they didn't get there overnight. I promise you. All right, they didn't get there overnight. It takes hard work, it takes consistency, it takes sticking with it to get your structure to the point where you can really visibly appreciate how much it is working to shape your children's behavior, how much it is working to define the good habits that you want to see in them. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to need you to hang in there, to keep working. It's going to need you to be consistent, but also to be sensitive and vigilant to the areas where you need to be flexible. Flexibility. Structure is not all about rigidity. It's about your ability to be flexible. You have to be flexible, right? You have to be flexible. So again, I'm waiting to hear from you. What is that one thing? What is that one area? What is that one challenge that you usually encounter or that you're probably dealing with when it comes to executing structure or applying structure in your home and all of that? This is particularly for those who already had structure running in their homes, those who are coming from different courses of mine, those who are from the DR tribe, What is that one area? What is that one challenge that you are still cracking your head about when it comes to making your structure work in your home? So remember I said at the beginning that structure would not make itself work. You have to make it work. All right. There is no way you're going to draw it up, hang it up there, and then everything will just fall into place. It doesn't work like that. It's going to need you to make it work. And it requires four things. We've talked about, I think we talked about five in the life lesson, but I'm going to, in the last lesson, I think last week. But today I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to highlight four of those things, right? It needs a village. Structure needs a village, that is a support system. It needs consistency, it needs presence, and it also needs flexibility. These are some of the key ingredients for making your structure work. Some of the key things, some of the key areas that you need to put in the most work. Who are those who are working this structure with you and in your absence? Remember, I said with you, meaning on a day-to-day basis, which of course would in most cases would be your spouse, but also in your absence, right? Who steps in when you're not there? What happens when you're not there? Who are those that come in? Who are those that constitute your support system? They are a big part of making your structure work. And trust me, I think that is the most challenging part, right? I think one of the biggest areas where I get the most questions from parents when it comes to structure is, I have my mom-in-law at home, I have my brother, my cousin, or someone else in the home, and they just won't get on board with the plan. I think that's one of the biggest issues that most parents bring up when it comes to trying to make their structure work. It's usually about, these people who are supposed to be members of your village, but that continually contradict the plan. We're going to talk about that as well in today's session. So you need a village, you need that support system to help you make your structure work, because again, you're not omnipresent. You can't be everywhere at every time. You can't be the one doing everything for your children. You can't be the one who is always trying to make the plan work. You're going to need support. You're going to need other people that will come on board to help you execute the plan, to help you run with your vision, even when you're not there. Because like I said, the most important thing about your parenting, the most important test of your parenting is what happens when you're not there. Those moments are sensitive, but they're also very crucial on your parenting journey. So again, structure is the backbone of discipline because it holds everything together. All right. Structure is actually like the discipline in action. Structure is how you build discipline into your children. Structure is how you help them, because discipline ultimately, you can understand how structure is the backbone of discipline until you understand what discipline is. Remember, I said this class will be a blend of discipline and structure. Now, discipline is training, discipline is teaching, discipline is helping your children learn how to lead themselves, discipline is helping your children learn self-discipline over time. It is not punishing a child or causing a child to feel pain or hitting your child. That's not discipline. So if you understand that discipline is about self-leadership, right? Nurturing self-leadership in your child or in your children, then it goes without saying that structure is the backbone of that system. If that's what you're trying to achieve, then you can't do without structure, because structure is a system that helps you teach your children how to make good choices, that helps you teach your children how to lead themselves even in your absence based on a system of values. So the two, you can't separate the two. If you lack structure, then you're in the punishment zone. You're not in the discipline zone. You're not disciplining, you're mostly punishing your children. Okay? All right. So let's look at how to adapt your structure. How do we actually make structure work? I hope you can see my slides. Let me know if they are too small. I don't know if you can see them. Let me know if you can see my slides clearly, please. Can you see my slides? I don't know, it's still loading on my end. Please let me know when you can see my slides, please. Okay, thank you. Great. So you can see my first slide. So let's talk about making your structure work. Now, one of the biggest things that One of the most important tools, especially when you consider the four things I talked about at the beginning. I talked about the village, the support system. I talked about presence, right? And how much of it you can make available when it comes to making your structure work. I also talked about consistency, right? Now, these are things that would need certain ingredients for you to be able to work them as tools. I hope I'm making sense. Now, when it comes to the village aspect of structure, which is super important, for me, I think it's one of the most important ingredients when it comes to, I think, second or maybe at the same level as presence, right? When it comes to you making your structure work and building that system or that village around your children that helps, that maintains the same voice even in your absence, because what is wrong should remain wrong even when you're not there, right? So when it comes to helping or having that village share the same vision, the family meeting is the biggest tool that you need to work. That's the biggest thing that you need to be able to use, right? Building the village, building your support system, getting them to be on board with the plan cannot do without family meetings. I cringe when parents tell me, "Oh, I've gone 5 months, 3 months, 4 months without a family meeting." I'm like, "How do you even do it?" Because I mean, family. If you understand how important structure is and how important the village is to the structure working, then you cannot even go for a month without family meetings. Especially because the more people you have involved in making your structure work, the more regularly you need to have those meetings. Because the family meeting is where you come together and you unite your mindsets, right? You cast your vision, you share the vision, you share the plan, you go over the challenges. It is one of the biggest platforms upon which you make your structure work. Even without the village, even for homes where it's just father, mother, kids, right? The more family meetings you have, the better your structure works. Because for structure to work, it must move away from being about dictatorship to being about a shared voice, a shared plan. It has to be something that, think about a company. If you think about how companies run, right? The most successful companies have very frequent meetings. Why? Because they are trying to, the goal is to cast the vision. The goal is to ensure that everyone is on the same page. Two cannot work together unless they agree. So you can't expect everyone in your home to buy the plan or buy the vision when you don't spend time ensuring that you are sharing the vision enough with them so they can be able to see what you see and then buy it eventually. Some of the most tricky issues in my home were solved on the basis of the family meeting. That's the most important platform when it comes to ensuring that your support system is on board. So the question I often get at this point is, so, oh, can my nanny part of the meeting? Should my mother-in-law part of the meeting? And I tell parents, yeah, I get it that there are certain sensitive things that you might need to discuss in the family meeting, but then there's no limitation to having two different kinds of meetings. You can have two different kinds of meetings because the meeting you have with your spouse, of course, not the one you're having with your kids, right? At that level, the discussions are completely different. That's high level administration. But then there is the general meeting, right? Like the general meeting that involves in a establishment involves all the staff, right? In your home, you have to have a meeting that involves all the members of the household, all those who participate when it comes to how the home runs, including whether it's your nanny or it's your uncle or it's your auntie or whoever is living in that home. You need to have a version of the meeting where everyone is present. Why? Because that is where you discuss the issues that affect how your structure is running. If not, you're going to continue meeting severe roadblocks. Now, you might think, oh, this person is resistant, they don't want to participate. But again, they say faith comes by hearing. That's what the scriptures tell us. Faith comes by hearing. The more you share the vision, the more you talk about what you're working towards, the more you talk about what you want to see, the more they will imbibe it. Even if at the beginning they don't see it, you need to share it often enough so that it grows on them, right? So the family meeting is the one of the most important tools that you need to make your structure work. One of the things I do in my home, particularly when there is something, maybe we have a week where things just seem out of place, chaotic. Even if we've had a meeting on Sunday, I gather my family for a quick meeting. My husband and I are very, 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 very good at that. Right? If there's something that crops up, something that is just going completely left, we gather, hey, everybody gather around, We have a short meeting, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We remind them of the plan. At the beginning of the day, particularly days when we have maybe high pressure, lots of things that have to be done, we have a small meeting after devotion to remind the kids this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen. This is this is what we expect. These are the changes that are coming up. Because the more of these meetings you have, the better your kids know what to expect, the better your kids are able to cooperate and know how to collaborate with you. It doesn't matter how small they are. You'll be amazed at how willing children become when it comes to cooperation when you make them feel like they are part of the plan. Whenever you make them feel like they are part of the plan, you see them going out of their way to try to ensure that they stick to the plan. But when you just draw the thing up and paste it there and you're giving orders, it's time, what are you doing now? You're supposed to be here, you're supposed to be there, and you're backing others. You meet lots of resistance. All right? You meet lots of resistance. So the family meeting, I'm going to spend lots of time here because it's so important. I see lots of parents who still think that family meetings are just something you do whenever you have spare time. For me, it is the lifeblood of how my home runs. So there is no negotiating, there is no, override. It has to happen. Even if it's without all the protocol. If you've gone through the guide, there's a whole protocol about how to have a family meeting, a proper one. Right? There are some meetings we have that we don't have the snacks, we don't have all those, protocol stuff, but we just gather and we meet and we discuss the issues at hand because it has to happen. It has to happen. All right. So the next thing I want you to bear in mind is supervision. So I'm going to share the family meeting guide for those who are on PPSG platform who don't have it yet, so you can go through it and understand how a proper meeting is supposed to be done. Again, feel free to ask your questions as we go along. The second thing I want you to bear in mind when it comes to making your structure work is supervision and age appropriate reminders. Emphasis on age appropriate because you are not a human alarm clock. That's not your role. Why are you repeating yourself 50 times to a 16-year-old? Why? Once is enough. The closer they are to adulthood, the less you should need to remind them. Because when I remind you once, that's grace already. But for a toddler, of course, you know that at that stage of their growth and development, they are forgetful. It still doesn't mean that you should become a human alarm clock, even for your toddler. But you want to give more grace at that age because you know that the child needs more support because of how their brain works at that level. All right. So when we talk about supervision, you have to also be aware of the fact that supervision does not mean that you're going to go there to hover over your child as though you are I don't know what to call it, some kind of a disciplinarian or a boss. Even bosses don't supervise their workers like that. I don't think so, right? I'm a boss. I've been a boss, big establishments. I don't think that that's even the right way for bosses to supervise work that is being done. But one thing many parents usually get wrong when it comes to supervision is that you think that it means going there and being like a hawk. You're hovering over the child to wash this, wash here, wash there, and you're backing instructions and you're, making the child feel uncomfortable. No, that's not the point, right? That's not how supervision should work. But supervision is important, especially when you just introduce the plan, right? Your children are going to help them sense. All right. So when we talk about, it means that you have to understand the time to take interest in how the different parts of your structure are working. Right? Show up, take interest, check where the chores done on. But you don't realize that supervision has to say the members of the village. I'm not saying go and be busting your spouse around. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have other members of the household that are playing a part in the structure, other adults that need Okay, we are back. Sorry about that interruption. We have some major fluctuations in the network. Okay, please let me know if I can be seen and heard. We simply just got our signal back. Okay, so yeah, great. We are back. I was talking about supervision, all right? And supervision is what ensures that your structure is actually lived out. I think I was at the point of interruption. I was saying that whenever we hear supervision, it's easy to just think about, oh, I have to supervise the kids. Yes, that's true, right? You need to be able to, take interest in what, not just what the kids are doing, but how they are doing it. Supervision is a very big tool for shaping character because with supervision, you teach your kids that it's not just about doing it, but it's also about how you do it, right? For example, how chores are done. Some kids will just go there, rush, 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 by do it anyhow, and then, dash out. And when you ask, have you done? Yes, I've done. So we teach our kids through supervision that it's not just about doing it, but also learning to do it properly, right? Doing it properly is as important as getting it done. But also, I want you to look at the perspective of, or the aspect of, taking interest in how other people that are involved in your structure are playing their part, because sometimes we overlook that. For example, the nanny. What happens when you're not there, right? Where did she get encounter difficulties? What behaviors is she trying to do? Trying to deal with at the moment. How do the kids behave when you're not there? What does she do? Does she know what to do? Does she know how to apply consequences? Does she know, how to address certain behaviors that they put up? Does she know how to guide them from one part of the structure to the other? Does she just forsake the structure altogether, or does she try to stick with the plan? Sometimes supervision may not even be you being physically there. You could just, pop in a phone call, hey, what's happening now? And those things. But at certain points of your structure or your journey to set up your structure, you realize that at the beginning, it's going to actually be very tasking because everyone is trying to learn how to adapt to the new structure, the new system that you've put in place. It's going to need you to be there more physically. It's going to need you to check in more often. It's going to need you to, be more present so that you can help them understand that this is the plan and it's important that we stick to it. Remember, I said supervision is not just, it's about ensuring that your structure is lived out on a day-to-day basis and not just drawn and pasted on the wall. Because mind you, when you're not there, those who are supposed to fit in your absence will have the tendency to want to just do it as before because human beings resist change. All right. So it's going to take you to take interest in not just the fact that you draw it and put it up on the wall, but that is it really being executed? That's as important as drawing it and putting it up on the wall. Supervision is key. Now, when it comes to age appropriate reminders, young children will need more reminders, older kids need less. So as your child grows older and older and older, the less you need to remind them. Ask yourself, why am I reminding my child so many times? All right, so I'm asking you this question. Why do you have a tendency to remind your kids about something that they have to do so many times? Think about it. The reason why you're reminding, go and do your chores. Why have you not done chores? Go and do this, go and do that. You're reminding the child about the same thing 5 times, and then you start yelling. Why are you reminding? What is the alternative? What happens when they don't do what they're supposed to do? That's the question you should ask yourself, right? What can I do? Because if not, you'll find yourself getting frustrated because no parent likes to have to repeat themselves several times, especially to a child who's big enough to remember what they were told the previous time. The reason why we find ourselves often repeating so many times the same instruction is because we understand that if the child doesn't, for example, when you draw your instruction, you know that if the child doesn't do it, you have to apply the consequences. Maybe you don't even feel like doing that. You don't feel like sometimes, it's tiring. It's tiring to have to follow through some of those consequences. But the truth is, when you keep using those reminders, your child becomes used to them. Your child becomes used to the fact that you usually remind them 50 times before they actually get to go and do it. And then they're able to wait until when they sense that you're actually getting to the point where you're really, really angry. That's when the child gets up to go and do it. You've trained them that way. That's the training that you have given them with your constant human alarm clock function, where you're always there to remind them. Have you brushed your teeth? Have you cleaned that table? Didn't I say you should go and clean it? Have you swept? Have you? You are not a human alarm clock. Stop. Don't make yourself one. All right. In my home, I ask my kids, what are you supposed to be doing now? There are three things that I want you to bear in mind. If you want to raise a child who is proactive, who is able to think and lead themselves, you want to move away from constantly telling them what to do. All right. You are not a human alarm clock. Please say that in the comments. Say, I am not a human alarm clock. You're not a human alarm clock. Your job is not to constantly remind, constantly instruct. No, that's why the structure is supposed to bring you more rest as a parent. Because when structure is in place, you need to be able to refer your children to it. If the child who is able to read and understand, the child who is able to understand or interpret visual cues, then you can send them to go check. That's one skill that you want them to build, one habit you want them to build. Because when you're not there, will they remember to go check? Today, in my home, the question came up, right? Who is supposed to share chores today? I know who was supposed to share, but I didn't say them. I said, okay, go and check. And they went there to check. Oh, okay, it's so and so person. I said, okay, fine. So here are the chores that are to be shared today. We have a board where it's written on. Every day, I would write the tasks that need to be carried out. And the person who's in charge of sharing chores is the one who does the sharing. Even my 5-year-old gets a chance to share chores. So because yes, leadership is a value that we really hold dear, and I'm training them to be able to lead, including lead people who are older than them. Because a leader doesn't always have to be older than everybody else. All right, so everyone has their day where they are in charge of sharing chores and ensuring that the chores are done, following through. So my job is to just say, okay, so what's happening? It's time for chores. Or what time is it? What are you supposed to be doing now? And they'll say, it's time for chores. Okay, so who is sharing? Mama, I don't know. It was go and check, go and check, go and check the plan. And they go and check the plan. So there are some things that you want to move away from constantly when it comes to reminders. It doesn't mean you should constantly say, go and do this, go and do that. No. All right? Ask questions that get your children thinking. Ask them, what should you be doing now? What comes next after breakfast? What is the next activity? Or when can you watch TV? So the child will learn to go and check the plan, because that's how you get the plan to stick in their minds. If you constantly have to be the one to keep functioning as the mobile instruction unit, then you will not get the rest that structure is supposed to bring to you. So have the habit of sending them. I send my nanny to check. I'm like, I'm asking her, what's happening now? Why are the kids? Why is this little one trying to go outside now? She's like, oh, mama, I thought it was time. I'm like, what time should they go down? That was at the beginning, because now she's actually a pro when it comes to knowing what time, what happens. But at first, I'll ask her, so what's supposed to be happening now? She'll be like, mama, I thought that it's time for. I'm like, okay, go and check. It's on the fridge. You'll see it there. And she goes and says, it's not yet time to go down. Come back up. So you have to be able to get those around you, be acquainted to checking the plan, because it's not just meant to decorate your wall or decorate your fridge. It's meant to be a reference point. It's meant to be a place where they consult what your expectations are, what the plan is, to remind themselves. All right. It's amazing how when you put up a plan like that, your kids are able to go there and check stuff. You see them arguing. No, it's not my turn to do this. It's your name that is there. Come, let's go and check. And you see them, they rush to the area and they look at it. Say, is that not your name there? You see? So it actually resolves certain arguments. All right. So the next thing I want you to bear in mind is encouragement and incentives. Don't be the policeman who only waits until your child crosses the line, misses their chores, does what they should not be doing at the moment, and then you swoop down and you just apply the negative consequence. No. Be the encourager, be the cheerleader, be the parent who is on the lookout for the times when your child does get it right. Because that is the part that actually encourages the behavior that you want to see. You need to put intentional effort in taking notice, taking cognizance of the times when your children do get it right. We actually created a system in my home that emphasizes certain values. All right. So it's kind of a reward system, but again, don't pay your children to do chores. All right. Don't pay them for doing chores. If you're doing that, I strongly advise against it. It's going to backfire. Don't pay your children to do chores. Now, one of the systems we try to set up in my home is one where the kids are able to get recognized for certain things that they have done in line with our values. And for now, I think I'm going to put that up on the forum, right? I'll snap my chat and I'll put it on the forum to see, explain to you how it works. So it's a point system where we are trying to encourage certain um, thoughtfulness, certain thoughts, certain initiatives in the children, like responsibility, doing things without anyone needing to remind you, doing things at the right time, taking the lead and being an example to your brothers. We have leadership there, we have responsibility, we have service, and we have this one I'm missing. There are four of them. There's leadership, there's responsibility, there is service, and there is excellence. Yes, that's the other one, right? When someone does their chore, or their work, or whatever they are tasked to do exceptionally well, I call others come and see, come and check, and they check each other's chores, and then decide who has done it really well. So it's not just about me saying you did it well, but your peers are going to tell you, your brothers will tell you, they'll check their trust, come and check mine, and they check each other's work and say, oh, yours is really good. You are the one who's supposed to get the point today because yours is really well done. So it's just a system that helps us to be able to get them to pay attention to certain things, certain values, certain ways, work ethics, how to do certain things without us necessarily having to police them or chase them and it's actually really working to help keep them conscious of maybe how to do work excellently, how to take responsibility maybe for their messes or to clean up after themselves, to do tasks without being reminded, or how to take the lead in certain situations. So, or how to be of service. That's another big one. You hear my kids come to mama today, I was of service. So I did this, I did this, I was, and they're now conscious of the things, taking initiative to serve each other, serve people in the house, be available to do things, even if it's not your chore, taking charge of what needs to be done. So that's the mindset that we want them to become aware of, to develop as they're growing up. So we create a system that, awards points to them for some of these things. And then it's only reviewed at the end of the week, and the person with the highest points wins, all right, gets maybe to decide what movie we're going to watch during family movie time, or gets to decide maybe where we're going to go at our next family outing and things like that. Just you get privileges. That's what you get. We don't give money for that. The only thing we give money for is creativity. We usually buy their creative works and then we put that money into their savings. We'll talk about that when we do finance. We put the money into their savings. All right. So you have to pay attention to the times when your children do get it right. It is so important. The high five that you give when your child did their chores so well. Don't This is not about flattery, but it's about you being intentional to notice effort. Even if your child is still struggling in that area, be very intentional about catching them when they do get it right, or noticing the effort that they put in, even if they didn't get the result that you expected. The next one I want to talk about is consistency and consequences. We talked about consequences yesterday and today during the morning lesson. But consistency is a big one, and it's actually a tough one as well, because when it comes to your making your structure work, one of the biggest setbacks you're going to face is your own inconsistency at following through with the plan, constantly changing the plan, constantly, changing your mind. Yes, you want to be flexibility is not the same as inconsistency. Please don't make that mistake. All right. Being flexible is has to do with adapting, not changing the plan every time you don't feel like doing what you said you were going to do. That's inconsistency. All right. Flexibility is about understanding that the plan is not working at this point, so we need to adapt to certain things that have changed in the environment or in the season to help in order to make it work. That's flexibility. But inconsistency is about knowing the plan, not feeling like doing what the plan says it has to be done, and then you just find another way or a shortcut to go around it. All right. Consistency is so important because for your structure to work, your children need to get the message that you will do what you said you're going to do. That when you say this is what happens when they choose make this decision, that's exactly what happens. All right. Not that you're going to give maybe a positive consequence. And when the time comes, you say, oh, you start postponing and changing your mind, or you give a negative consequence, and then when it's time to apply it, you start, start saying, "Oh, it's okay. I've apologized. Let's leave it like that." Remember, we said this morning that forgiveness does not cancel consequences, because consequences are not about punishing your child or revenging, but they are about helping your child learn about the impact of their behavior. That's the goal. That's the purpose. Especially when you are able to pick appropriate consequences, they truly help your child to learn about how their behavior impacts others, or impacts the environment, or impacts maybe even their comfort. So consistency is so key. And one of the things that helps you be consistent as a parent, whether it comes to discipline or even just showing up, is structure. So it's amazing how structure needs consistency and consistency needs structure. So they both need each other. You will be inconsistent as a parent if you don't have structure, because structure shows you where and when you need to show up and do certain things, right? And at the same time, you must realize that structure also needs you to be consistent. It needs you to follow through with what you said you were going to do, to not change your mind every time the mood has changed, because that's what's going to happen most of the times. That you know the consequence, you're like, I'm tired. You just leave it. Don't do it again. You've changed. You've changed your mind. And that's why I said this morning in the morning lesson, don't be in a rush to say this is what's going to happen if you do this. Ask yourself, can I follow through with that consequence? And if the answer is no, then don't be in a rush to dish it out. Because if you're going to struggle to apply it, your children will learn that you cannot be taken seriously. They will learn that, sometimes mama will just let it go. And that makes them learn overall that sometimes I can get away with this bad behavior. Sometimes it depends. It depends on the mood, it depends on different things. So if there's a chance that I can get away with it. So the child is encouraged to keep putting up the behavior. It's one of the biggest reasons why certain behaviors are so difficult to break, because the parent is inconsistent in their response. One of the easiest things that helps you to be consistent is to not just think about the consequence carefully, but to also ensure that you are, excuse me. One of the things that helps you, right, is to not just think about, to think carefully think about the consequence that you want to apply, but also to remember that when it comes time for you to apply that consequence, you have to be ready to do exactly what you said you were going to do. All right? You have to be ready to do what you said you were going to do, to not change the plan. So find a consequence that you know that you can apply. All right? You can apply it with ease. You can apply it even when you don't feel like it, so that you don't have to decide all the time. What helps consistency with discipline is already having a pre-established plan. This is what I will do when my child does this. That helps you to be consistent, because one of the things that makes us inconsistent is that we forget what we said we were going to do. Think about it, right? I don't know about you. One of the things I tell parents often is, don't give consequences that say, all right, because you took the chocolate without asking, when we are going out over the weekend, you will not come. The chances are by the time weekend comes, you've forgotten what the consequence was. You don't remember. And your child is counting on that. I've noticed this with my first in particular. He's very good at noticing the consequences that we easily forget. Whenever the consequence is too distant, the parent tends to forget to follow through. Let me hear from you, right? Can you relate with that? When you give distant consequences, you usually forget. You had said tomorrow you will not watch TV, or tomorrow you will not go and play outside. And then tomorrow comes, you forgot that you even said that. And then your child will not remind you. Your child will not remind you that, mom, but you said I will not go down today now. No, sometimes they do, but rarely. They will just sneak out. They'll just say, oh, it's time to go. And you say, okay, you can go. And they'll not say, remember, you forgot that you said. The child is hoping that you forget. And that passes the wrong message to them. That's why having things defined and written down on paper can actually help you when it comes to execution and being consistent. All right. Now, finally, we have flexibility. I've talked about that already. Flexibility is not about constantly changing the plan all the time, but it's more about being sensitive to notice when certain parts of your structure are not working, reviewing that part, and then making the necessary changes to adapt your structure either to the season or to the stage of growth or to the environment. Those are things that change. Those are things that change. So before we run off this class today, I'd like to talk about adapting your structure. adapting your structure, adjusting your structure to suit different seasons, different stages of growth and development, but also different environments. One of the reasons why you need to be flexible is because your child will grow, your environment will change, and the seasons will keep changing. For example, we are now in the holiday season. We are just coming out of the school season. That's a drastic change of season, right? Every flexibility is required because there will constantly be change that you need to navigate. And one of the ways to navigate change while continuing to make your structure work is being able to identify how to adapt, how and when to adapt your structure. So times and seasons will change, your child will change, and if your structure is rigid, right, and ignores all of these changes, it's going to collapse. It's not going to work. If your child was once a toddler and now they're 4 years old, you're still having the same structure that you had drawn up 2 years ago, it's still pasted there, and you're still trying to apply it. Your child is now 4, right? Nothing has changed in the system. It's going to collapse. In fact, it doesn't work anymore because the child you drew it for has grown significantly. Has grown significantly. So as your child grows from stage to stage, you have to adapt your structure. When you move from one season to another, you need to adapt your structure. When you move from one environment to another, you need to adapt your structure as well. I think I've shared constantly about the fact that every time I travel with my kids, we travel with a version of our structure. There are certain components that don't change, the values don't change, of course, right? But the schedule, for example, is going to change. Sometimes the rules even are different because it depends on where we are going to and what is expected of them. So you need to be able to adapt. Where am I going to? Or what has changed in my environment? Maybe it's a new person that has come to your home, or something that has changed. Maybe one person, that used to be there to support is no longer there. Now you have a system, or you're left with your kids who are dependent, and you need to change how things have been done because the support system you had is no longer there. So you have to be able to quickly identify what has changed in my environment, what has changed in the season, right? What are the changes that maybe are coming so that you plan in advance, or what are the changes that are currently going on that are causing lots of difficulties with making my structure work? If you can ask that question every now and then, every time you meet difficulties with your structure, with your schedules, you will always find the solution. Okay, you would always find the solution. So when it comes to adapting your structure, right? Sorry, there's certain things that you must take into consideration. Now, adapting, remember I said it has to do with your child's growth, so their age matters. It has to do with the environment, it has to do with the season. Those are the big 3 aspects that will need you to constantly adapt. Now, your children are usually of different ages, except you have just one child. But in most homes, you have kids of different ages, right? Maybe you have 5-year-old, you have a 2-year-old, you have a 10-year-old, you have a 16-year-old. Means that you have one child in each age group, and that is the dynamics of running that kind of structure is really going to be demanding. But it will need you to also be sensitive to where each child is per time, right? For example, toddlers will need visuals. They need to be able to see because they can read. So you can't put up a structure on the wall that your toddler can't read what the words are saying. So you need to have something visual to help your toddler be able to learn to lead themselves eventually. Now, when it comes to teenagers, you must understand that they need autonomy and self-leadership. You do not draw a schedule for a teenager. You do not define structure components, right? Maybe talk about rules, consequences for teenagers without getting them involved. I'm not saying ask their permission or ask them, what consequence should I give? You brainstorm on it together. So you don't just say, oh, I've done it, this is it, follow it. No, it's not going to work. All right? Because at that stage, your child needs some amount of autonomy, but also needs to learn self-leadership. So you want to get them involved, you want to get them to be an integral part of the process. Draw up their schedule, bring to you for approval, you go over it together, you make corrections, and then you adopt it. Now, the next category are the special needs kids. Special needs kids, we can also put them in the toddler category because just like toddlers, they are going to need more help to be able to eventually learn to lead themselves. It's possible. All right. You can have an autistic child, you can have a child who has, I don't know, who's on the spectrum or maybe cerebral palsy or something. And from constant repetition, you can be able to get your child to the point where they are able to anticipate what comes next. They need routines. Now, because these special needs are usually at different, categories or different levels of severity. So depending on that, you can be able to determine that if I continue, maybe if you have a child who is nonverbal, but is able to, understand what's happening, understand different cues, then that child should be able to interpret a visual schedule over time. So it just requires that you are able to understand what it is that your child's capacity is, but also to not completely underestimate them. Just try to be consistent and put them on a routine. Everything happens at the same, in the same way every day for a period of time. Eventually, they're going to start anticipating it, and then it can lead to self-leadership over time. Right? So avoid to try to draw a schedule or a structure that just bundles everybody together. It's going to set you up to fail. Now, remember I said the seasons will change. So when we talk about adaptation to navigate these different changes, you want to think about holidays, the new environment, big changes that are happening. Maybe a new baby is coming, right? A new baby coming means you need to adapt your structure because there's going to be a lot of change. All right, there's going to be a lot of change. So every time you are navigating change on your journey with your family, you must adapt your structure. You must adapt your structure because it is in those seasons of big changes that things fall through the cracks. It's in those seasons where something, maybe extra pressure has come on the family, maybe an extra baby has come, a new baby has come, right? It's going to put pressure on parental presence and attention. So you might easily begin to overlook certain things. Why? Because you're now focused on the baby. So every time there is a big change, that is the season or the time for you to adapt your structure. Note this. Every time your family is navigating change, you have to adapt your structure. Ask yourself, what is it? How is this change going to affect how things work in our home? Are we still going to have time, to have our usual morning devotion in the morning, or will it now be shorter, or can we move it to the evening before bed? You ask yourself the relevant questions. Something has changed in my home environment. Something has changed, in the season, right? How will this affect the sequence of activities that take place in my home? How will it affect what activities are taking place in my home? For example, now there's a chunk of period in the day where kids used to be at school, but now they are at home. So you're adapting your structure means you need to fill those hours. You need to ask yourself, at first my kids will wake up, go through their school morning routine, get in the bus and go to school. But now they are home from the time they wake up till, so that chunk of time needs to be intentionally defined. So every time there is change, you need to adapt your structure. And don't forget to use your family meeting to adapt your structure and navigate that change. So never adapt your structure without calling for a meeting. Every time you adapt your structure, you need to call for a meeting because that's where you're going to communicate what the changes are going to be and how each person is supposed to chip in to make it work. All right. So again, we've come to the end and I'm just going to stop here because for the sake of time, we are going to take any questions that you might have about adapting structure, and I forgot to mention, every time your structure is not working, it calls for a review. If you've been trying to make your structure work for a while, there's a part of it that just keeps failing. There's so much chaos at those periods of the day. Stop and adapt. That's what flexibility is all about. So flexibility is about being able to adapt your structure to suit the different seasons, stages that you're going through on your journey. So holidays, new environment, big changes, and when the structure is not working, that calls for you to stop and adapt. So I'm open for any questions you might have. Any questions that you might have, I'm ready to answer them. If not, we have come to the end of this session. And for those on the PPHB platform, please don't forget that your structure components are due tomorrow, tomorrow, Friday. All right. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. If you're catching this session as a replay, Don't hesitate to use the comment section. Don't hesitate to ask any questions you might have, and I will get back to you. If you have questions, don't stay silent with them. All right. I see none of us here are having any challenges with structure because I asked the question at the beginning and I said, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to making your structure work? And someone said other family members who don't adhere to it and won't let the kids follow the structure. You know, whenever there's antagonism when it comes to making structure work, don't focus on the plan only and the fact that the person does not want to cooperate. Focus on what could be their motive. Why why do they not want to adapt? Because most people see structure as limitation. They see structure as, what's the word I'm looking for? They see structure as restriction. They see structure as being too strict, right? Most parents don't understand that structure actually makes children happier. You would think that when children are just free, do anything they want at any time, they're going to be happy. Now, there are four types of parenting styles, and research has shown over and again that the permissive parenting style is the most one of the most permissive and neglectful parenting styles are one of the most dangerous, because you would think that a parent who lets the child do anything would actually have a happy child. But on the contrary, when the parent just allows the child to do whatever they want, it leads to insecurity, it leads to low self esteem, it leads to the child feeling, unloved. All right, same with neglectful. It leads to the child feeling unloved. So don't think that structure is about restriction. So one of the things you want to do when you have a family member who is just not willing to go by the plan is you ask them, what would you rather have us do? What changes would you want to see, right? What are some of the things that you think that are not necessary, or what do you think we can switch them for? What do you think we can put here and put that? So get them to be part of the plan by asking them to chip in. That's one way. Another way is to try to understand where they're coming from. One thing you must remember is that in marriage brings together two people that were raised by different families, different cultures, and these two persons to come together and try to blend all those things from their past into one. It is a challenge. It's a challenge. One person says, "Oh, don't do this at this time." The other one says, do it this way and do it that way. Some might say, okay, the kids wake up in the morning, they should have their bath. Another one says, why should they be when they're still going to play and get dirty? So you must always find areas of compromise. You have to. I think I shared the story about how we finally got our kids to stop playing on Sunday. That was completely my husband's idea. I didn't see it from his perspective, but I respected it, right? For me, that was one of the areas where I could compromise. I could okay, I don't see the harm in it. It actually sounds like a good idea. Though I felt the kids didn't play much during the school week, they needed their Sunday to play as well. But he was like, no, Sundays, nobody goes out, nobody goes outdoor to play. We all do everything indoors as a family. We have quality time as a family. There's no going out for the kids, no playing downstairs with neighbors. Sunday is a day where you stay indoors and do everything indoors. I didn't see it from that perspective. But that was an area where I was willing to compromise. Because hey, if it's all this how it should be, you're the one imposing everything, and there is no place where you are able to compromise. There are different ways that you can, compromise when it comes to structure, just for the sake of finding that common ground with the other significant people who are participating in the structure. You have to find ways to compromise. Now, when the compromise does not transmit a contrary value to your children, does not contradict what you're trying to, it doesn't contradict what you're trying to teach or nurture in them in a major way, then you can use a compromise as a way to get other people who are supposed to, because you can't do it alone. If you're married and your spouse is completely at loggerheads with you when it comes to structure, the structure will never work. Right? The structure will never work. So sometimes also take interest in, all right, so what's your thought process? Why do you think, this is not going to work? What do you think we can do instead? You must find the areas of compromise. Try to understand where the other person is coming from, and then find ways to find that common ground. Because without that, it's not going to work. Can I draw up structure for a nanny and we brainstorm on it together? Draw up structure for a nanny. What do you mean by, do you mean like a schedule for her? Or do you mean like, I'm sure you're talking about the schedule. So when you say structure, you're talking about four different things. I'm sure you're talking about the schedule. Right. Yeah, it depends. Your structure, you might have a nanny who maybe, cannot draw up one for herself. You can, yes, you can. You can draw up a schedule with, I will not say for, I will say with. All right. With is more inclusive. For means I draw it and then I bring it to you and then we brainstorm. With means we sit down together and we are doing it. You can do that with your teenager as well. You must not be that they go and draw it up. Sometimes you can actually sit with them and say, okay, in the morning, what do you think? This how should we, what should come first? Will you do chores before you have breakfast or breakfast before you do chores? You brainstorm with your teenager. So I would say with and not for. All right. So sit down with her and then you guys come up with a plan. Tell her, okay, this is, you see what I've done with the kids. This is what's happening with the children. I think with you, we need to try to apply the same systems. We can try to orderly and all that. What happens in the morning is what I think. What do you think? You work on it together. All right. So that's more inclusive than doing it for her. If you want it to work, then you want to do that with, not for. So just a change of pronoun. All right. So if there are no other questions, then I think that we can end the lesson. I don't think there are any. Thank you for those brilliant questions. I love the points that you brought up. Has really helped to bring more depth into the lesson. I believe there are others here who might be able to, draw some juice from some of the things that we've discussed based on the questions that you asked. All right. But the issue of having family members who are not aligning with the plan is a big one. And again, I'm going to add this before I close. Now, when it comes to structure and having those in your home align with the structure, you must be able to distinguish between permanent family members of household members and non-permanent family household members. Now, when someone comes into your home, as a non-permanent family member, structure is not something that let me just give you a typical example. So I've had parents tell me, oh, I have this nanny, no matter what the plan I put up, she just completely does what she wants. She's constantly going against the plan. She doesn't lead the children the way she's supposed to. I've advised her, I've talked with her, we have negotiated and everything. But every time I turn my back, she just completely goes against the plan. The question I ask them is, did they tie the person there? That's someone that you can and should be able to let go because you understand that structure is not negotiable. It's tough, but that is exactly what you need to be able to do. That's not somebody who is permanent. That's somebody who is temporary, right? And don't let temporary people get in the way of a plan that is supposed to go a long way, right? You have to be able to make those decisions that help you ensure that your structure is protected and continues to serve your family the way it should. All right, there are no more questions, and I think we can call it quits. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not done so yet, so that every time we come on, you have no difficulties finding your way here. And of course, if you have any questions, even after this session, feel free to ask on the forum, and you're going to get the answer that you need. Thank you so much for being here. Take care, and I'll see you at the next class. Bye.